In recent days, von der Leyen's remarks about the EU's further turn to Asia have made Chinese winners emotional. Is Europe going to turn to China in an all-round way? My opinion is that you think too much. Many people know that before the trade war started, I personally firmly opposed some people challenging big customers. I criticized the thinking of the country of interest countless times and firmly opposed state capitalism and dumping all over the world. But after the trade war started, I firmly supported the Chinese government's counterattack. Many people said that I was a big foreign propaganda licker. I was too lazy to respond to this. I don't know if you know Hu Shai. Since the outbreak of the anti-Japanese war later, Hu Shai, who had previously advocated that war with Japan should not be started lightly, immediately demanded firm resistance and became the most determined advocate of war. He believed that once the two countries were heading for a full-scale war, there would be no peaceful path to take. Behind all the signs of peace, the essence was humiliating surrender. Choosing humiliating surrender when there was still strength to resist before reaching the end of one's rope was not what a normal person would do. I naturally do not have the knowledge and vision of Hu Shai, but in the face of Trump's hooligan behavior of overturning the table, I firmly support the government's counterattack. When I was a child, I lived in the Northeast, and there were many ruffians in the county town. That is what Southerners call a thug. If you give in to this kind of person, he will think you are easy to bully. He will keep bullying you and take advantage of you to ask for things and money. If you fight back and beat them into submission, you can suppress them. Trump is certainly not an ordinary thug. He is a big gangster. He uses the reputation of the United States for so many years, the country's military strength, economic strength, moral strength, and legal strength to threaten the world. Of course, the biggest target here is China. Regarding China's failure to fulfill its WTO commitments for so many years, and its twists and turns in taxation, such as tariffs, China's tariffs are actually divided into three major aspects: tariffs, consumption tax on imported goods, and value-added tax on imported goods. Until now, the United States seems to have not figured out the situation and how the Chinese government uses administrative means to build barriers outside the law. I can see it more clearly than anyone else. As for the invisible hand forcing technology transfer, making small moves in foreign exchange inflows and outflows, and not keeping up with international standards in accounting documents, I have always criticized this. People who have read my articles in China for a long time almost all know my ideas and my thinking logic. But now on YouTube, this is a video. It can't be like my previous articles of 3,000 or 2,000 words. The idea is clear. Besides, the thinking of people who watch the video is different from that of people who read the article. They rarely care about what you really want to express. They just judge your political spectrum based on 1 or 2 sentences. They even say what kind of person you are because of your words. This makes me speechless. So this time, the basic logic of my support for counterattack is that we cannot give in. If we do not resist, you will be controlled by Trump. Counterattack may have a way out. My way out is naturally not the government, but China's private enterprises and ordinary people. I emphasize again a truth that few people on YouTube understand. The goal of the trade war is not to target a certain government, but to target industrial workers. On this point, I hope everyone listens to Canadian Prime Minister Carney. Many times, I feel that our thinking is very similar. It's not that I don't want peace, nor do I want the Chinese government to correct many of its current mistakes, nor do I not support zero tariffs. People who are familiar with me know that I firmly supported the Mitsubishi negotiations 3 years ago. Even last year, when Mrs. Yellen came to China and asked China to reduce overcapacity and increase workers' wages, I also firmly support it. But the Chinese government, no matter what the Americans say, they just oppose it. If you look back now, if they could have reached some agreements with the Biden administration, there would not be today's trade war. Many times, I am very speechless about many people in the Chinese government. They always oppose instinctively. They oppose without analyzing what is beneficial to them. Mitsubishi in the Trump 1.0 era, almost the whole world, opened the door to trade with China. You let them in a little bit, what do you lose? But they don't want to. The Biden administration's decapacity and increase of workers' wages are also beneficial to China. It is conducive to China to establish a consumer market. At the same time, China will no longer pose such a serious threat to the world. There will be no large-scale dumping and reduce the contradictions between China and other countries. But, because these proposals were put forward by Americans, some people instinctively oppose it. As a result, one great opportunity after another is lost. Now it is the same in Europe. There are several issues between Europe and China, which are now irreconcilable. One is China's attitude towards the Russian-Ukrainian war, especially with Russia. The relationship between Russia and Russia. Second, Europe itself is also a region with developed manufacturing industries. They are also determined to protect their industries. Third, the issue of values. I won't say much here. I have said it countless times before. If China does not solve the problem of values, they will eventually become enemies with the Russians. Fourth, the issue of market competition. The EU and China are now facing the problem of losing the US market. They need to seek new markets. But the problem is that there is no such market in the world except the United States. Fifth, the issue of legal incompatibility, especially regarding private property rights, labor intellectual property rights, etc. Now it seems that they are completely on different tracks. Fifth, faith. I won't say much about this. It's too sensitive. Sixth, that is cultural differences. This problem is too big. I won't make a detailed analysis in this video. If these problems are not resolved, it will be difficult for China and Europe to find a common ground. On the issue of this trade war, I can understand the current anxiety and fear in Europe, but the Chinese bureaucrats are different. Let's not talk about the contradictions between the two sides on electric vehicles. You can look at Lucet's remarks. No matter how educated Europeans are, can they tolerate his attitude? I don't know if you still remember that there was once a China-EU Comprehensive Trade Agreement, which is the so-called China-EU Trade Agreement. The agreement was negotiated from 2014 to 2020. It took 7 years. It was almost done. 35 rounds of negotiations were held. Finally, when the two sides finally reached a consensus on the content of the negotiations, when each side was advancing its internal agenda, why did it stop? Don't the Wolf Warriors reflect on it? Europeans attach so much importance to human rights. How did you do it? Then you also launched the so-called reciprocal counterattack. Retaliatory sanctions were imposed on European members and several related entities. Now it seems unreasonable. Now Europe is asking for overtime. This kind of product cannot be imported entering Europe. China will soon implement an 8-hour work system and implement the labor law. If you had known this would happen, why did you do it in the first place? What did you oppose in the first place? What did you sanction? If China had not been unreasonable, the EU would have frozen the approval process of the China-EU trade agreement. What kind of situation is the trade war now? Many times, I really don't know what to say. What are some people excited about in von der Leyen's speech this time? When von der Leyen's words are examined in different contexts, there is a premise that the United States accounts for 13% of global goods. The EU's goal is to protect the remaining 87% of the world's trade. From a macrological point of view, his statement clearly includes the fact that China accounts for 14% of global trade. This shows the toughness of Europe in the game against the United States. Even in the fastest case, they still play an important role in global trade. Turning to Asia is a policy shift that the EU is undergoing. But in this process, China must know what the EU needs and what the bottom line is. You cannot break it. So for the EU, they are drifting away from the United States, especially on issues such as the Russian-Ukrainian war, tariffs, and NATO. They have become enemies to some extent. The United States is becoming less reliable and is no longer an ally. So is China. Is China reliable? In the eyes of the EU, China is both the key to the game and may also be a new problem. The EU can turn, but the problem is that China will shift cheap goods from the United States to Europe, thus forming dumping. What should we do? The key is on human rights issues. It is far from enough for China to implement an 8-hour work system. How do you solve the problem of union law? Moreover, the United States only has tariffs. China not only has tariffs, but also forced joint ventures, forced intellectual property transfers, and and regulatory tax bias, forced guidance of public opinion, and even violent restrictions on driving and purchases of automobile products. Including China's trade system, and the products of certain national enterprises. Cult issues. People are really wearing the same pants as you, and you may not even be able to wear pants in the future. In general, in terms of core geopolitics, in order to deal with Trump's crazy and unpredictable behavior, China and the EU are undoubtedly willing to have more contacts because both sides are a bargaining chip in the game against the United States. Both sides are interested in contacts and will use contacts to influence the game against the United States, but both sides will face serious constraints. The EU's shift to Asia is good for China, and China's opening of the market to the EU is also good. Let me say this seriously. If China can make major concessions on human rights, national and capitalist values, it is very likely that a good agreement will be reached between the EU and China. The EU once said that in order to avoid over-reliance on China, it will also avoid over-reliance on the United States for the same reason. This is what the two sides can talk about and do. So can China seize this opportunity? I think it is very likely now. Today's topic ends here. Goodbye.